Premium Pack is back! While not as big as its younger brother Animation Chronicles, even though with the current state of Animation Chronicles it means this pack only has 9 less cards, Premium Pack has been just as much of a joy to see, bringing long-forgotten manga cards into the game, which is kind of shocking not to see as much, given that this is a franchise that started as a manga. As someone who grew up reading a ton of the manga, especially the GX manga, I've been anticipating each year's releases, and this year has been no exception. And with its full content being revealed surprisingly early, we now know all 20 cards we'll be getting. I don't plan to do videos just talking about new set releases since that's not what I'm interested in, but I am willing to give my opinions on ones for cards that are releasing from the anime or manga. So let's go through all of these old manga cards together, and also some lore cards I guess. Starting us off, we have 3 of Bandit Keith's remaining cards, which is fewer than I was expecting this year, though I guess Konami didn't feel the need to print engine tuning given that they gave Frenzy this effect. Motor Kaiser is a level 5 Dark Machine, which has the effect that it can reveal itself in hand to let you normal summon a Dark Machine an additional time this turn. And while it's on the field, you can destroy any monster you control in order to summon an engine token to your side of the field. I've had a bit more time to sit on this since I was actually very excited to see this card printed, and now that I have thought about it, I can accept that it fucking sucks. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but still, it's not very good. I do find it very funny how the general consensus is that this card would be insane if it was 1 level lower, which is true. The fact that this requires an additional thing to get onto the field to even summon it is very, very annoying. Though the additional normal summon is generic, so there are a few things you can do with it. Namely, in Orcus, you can use this to get an Orcus on the field without using your normal summon, allowing you to make Galatea 2, who can then discard Kaiser to search Babel. Add another guy into the mix, and you can easily get to old Galatea without needing to use the effect of something like Harp. As for its in-archetype use, if you open all 3 of the motor monsters, which should tell you the quality of this play if you need to open 3 specific guys, you can normal summon Shell, then use the additional normal summon on Frenzy, tributing the Shell, which spawns a token from it. Then by linking those 2 off, you can then summon Cleef or Genius, and by summoning the 2 tokens you get from Frenzy to its zones, you can then search any level 5 machine, which can include things like Desperado Barrel for in-archetype stuff, but can also include generic things like Regulus. From there, you can use the remaining tokens to make IP Masquerena to go into something like Unicorn on your next turn, or go into any other Link machine such as Ballista to do other things. You may have noticed I'm only talking about the additional normal summon effect you get from this because, its on the field effect is kinda fucking terrible. For the cost of any guy you have, you get a meaningless token, which is a terrible trade-off, and that just makes me wonder why they didn't just make Kaiser float into a token when it dies. It combos with the Heavy Metal Raider stuff, and I guess you could like steal an opponent's monster with triple attack and then blow it up before they get it back? Even though you can just link it off? Yeah, this is not great. It's maybe something you want to consider for the first effect, but you're not summoning this thing. 2-for-1 Repair Job, meanwhile, is a lot better. It banishes a Dark Machine from your graveyard to summon a guy who spawns a motor token from anywhere except banishment. And when a Dark Machine leaves the field except by battle, summons a token in its place. Mind you, you can't activate both effects on the same turn, prevent you from link spamming with them, but it's still a very good effect for extension. The only problem that this card has is that its targets for it are very few and not great. And in 2 cases, they have effects that don't benefit being summoned off of this. Kaiser you want to be in your hand because the additional normal summon is the actually good effect, and Frenzy needs to be tribute summoned in order to gain its effect to spawn tokens. That leaves us with just Motor Shell and Fiendish Engine Omega, one of which gives you a token when it leaves the field, and the other one gives you it during the end phase. So obviously Shell is the better choice here. I could see this being really good in a theoretical Machine Link deck in the future, especially if we get a card in the future that searches this card, though for right now I think this is a good card without a deck that really wants it. Finally, there's Scrap Garage, which upon a Dark Machine being destroyed, summons up to 3 Dark Machines from your graveyard, but zeros their attack and defense, and can be banished from the graveyard to destroy a machine you control. Oh, cool, I can just destroy one of my guys for no effect? Yippee. Bringing 3 of your guys back is nice, even with the inherent slowness of it being a trap, but it can provide some good recovery, especially since it doesn't negate the effect, and I could easily see this leading to a comeback or two. It is worth mentioning that the effect doesn't care who destroys it, which obviously pairs well with Kaiser, for all good that does, as well as Blast Spider, who can not only trigger this, but is assault once per turn, meaning you can get 2 pops with it, but it also pairs well with Trap Track, which can destroy a guy to set this card, which then allows you to immediately flip this to revive 3 guys. The second effect, meanwhile, is complete garbage. I have no idea why it doesn't at least spawn a token since all the other cards do. Unless you're planning on using this to revive the Dark Machinas in order to do some funny stuff with Citadel, I doubt this will accomplish much of anything. My overall thoughts on Motor are a bit mixed. Repair Job and Garage are obviously pretty good, and Kaiser has a good effect, but I feel like there isn't really a deck these fit into at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if Bandit Keith was part of the next Legendary Duelist set, since it's been 7 years since his last wave of Legacy support, and they are kind of pushing Metalmorph towards being Joey's thing, but who knows. For the GX support, we have 3 more of Alexis's Ice cards, which I wasn't really expecting to see, as some of Chaz's dragons to go with Light and Darkness Dragon would have made more sense, or even some random hero supports. But I'll let it slide since these seem to be good. Ice Doll can special summon itself by discarding a water monster, and on summon, can search any water spellcaster in the game. And when it's sent from the field to the graveyard, grabs Ice Doll Mirror, which is a card I'll talk about in a few minutes. All of these are fantastic support effects, which can help boost the consistency of water decks nicely. If you use your normal on this, or you have 2 waters you can discard, you can grab Water Channeler with this, then use it to grab any water monster you need. But more notably, it can grab several Ice Barrier monsters, including Revealer, which is a fantastic starter for the deck. It's actually very fitting that these work well with Ice Barrier. Since some of Alexis' support was released around the time their last structure deck released, most notably Ice Barrier. So this working super well with the deck is really great. And really, what's the downside? That you're waterlocked? Only water decks want to use this, unless you're planning on using this to search Water Enchantress. This card's great. The next card is Twin Pillars of Ice. Yeah, for some reason the next card according to the set numbers is this and not the Ice Doll card. Odd. Anyway, it's a quick lay spell that summons 2 tokens to your side of the field, but locks you out of the extra deck for the turn, and can be banished to normal summon a water monster. You know, I'm glad Konami added the extra deck lock to this card, so we don't even have to consider whether or not we should play this. Like, this unsearchable spell might be worth summoning some link material. Nope, it just tells us that it's not good. Don't even consider it. Who cares about the free normal summon when you're locked out of most of your main cards to begin with? Ice Doll Mirror is the last of the GX cards, and it can send a water monster from your hand or field to summon one from your deck with the same name as one you control, and can be banished from the graveyard to get another Ice Doll from your deck or graveyard. It's more limited than I first thought, since you need to be controlling what you want to duplicate in order to get the most value out of it, unless you're planning on discarding it for something, but I'm sure there are some neat things that can be done with it. The ability to also fetch another Ice Doll or recycle the one you used previously is also nice, so this is overall a nice card. While I don't see myself playing with these cards anytime soon, I think the 2 cards from this series that are actually playable are good. Help some decks in a nice way and add some possible new lines that certain archetypes could make use of. Which is a lot more than I can say about some other cards in this set, especially the one we talked about just a few seconds ago. As for the 5Ds cards, we're starting with something that is extremely exciting to see, that being new cards that are tied to Ancient Fairy Dragon. Kinda. Specifically, we are getting Forest cards, a series of monsters used by Luna in the manga that paired well with Ancient Pixie Dragon. And as a result, the first real archetype she has had, which makes it all the stranger we only got 3 cards, but okay. The first of these 2 is Bat, the Forest Ninja, which, yes, does technically mean it's a ninja card, meaning it can be summoned and searched by all of their support. However, summoning it this way isn't as necessary as you may think, as all you need is a field spell on either side of the field to special summon this guy from your hand. Also, if he's summoned and you have Fairy Tail Journey Prologue, Fairy Tail Prologue Journey's Dawn on the field or in the graveyard, you can add any light beast monster from your deck to your hand. We'll talk about the field spell in a bit, but as a quick note, I do like that this triggers if it's on the field or in the graveyard since this is AFD support. And you'll likely pop Prologue with AFD's effect so you can get another field spell. so being able to plus even if it's out on the field is really nice. And as for the plus, yeah, this card's great. Dragging itself out just because a field spell is up is amazing, and being able to search any light beast is incredible, especially since, again, you're going to AFD who can then just special summon that monster out to the field. We'll make it even better once we get a potential AFD retrain or archetype, which probably will come in a future main set. The other furry pal we got in this set is Wonk.
I've been alive for 3 seconds.
Noble Knight of the Forest, which, yes, does mean you can summon this guy off of the effect of Merlin. This is also the first time anyone has thought of what Merlin can do in years. Anyway, Wonk on summon can search Prologue, or if you have Prologue in rotation, draws a card. Prevent your opponent from attacking anything on the field except this card while a field spell is in play, and when it's destroyed reduce the attack of its killer by 500. The second 2 effects are superfluous as they only exist since they're the manga effects, so really what we're here is for the search effect. Grabbing the field spell is nice since it turns on not only bat but all future forest support, though I kinda wish the second effect did something else other than just drawing a card. Like, what if instead it searched a card that mentioned Prologue so you can grab bat to go along with it? Regardless, that is mostly a nitpick as this card is still very good. Now that we're through the little guys, it's time we finally explain what Prologue does. While it's face up on the field, it has all battle damage both players take. Yep, that is certainly the manga effect. The more relevant effect is that if you control a light beast or level 7 or 8 dragon, you can draw a card, which is basically just Ancient Pixie Dragon's effect, which makes sense given that it was their manga boss monster. Each triggering while you control a light beast is nice since Wong covers that, but it also has the Sign of Dragon coverage for AFD and the other Sign of Dragons. There is, however, a funny fuck up with this card. If you're familiar with how cards that cover the signers are usually worded, it's not level 7 or 8 Dragon Synchro, it's Power Tool Synchro or level 7 or 8 Dragon Synchro. They just fucking forgot to include Power Tool Dragon in the effect? And it's not even like there's a story reason why. In fact, it actually makes more sense to include it since Leo and Luna shared the deck in the manga, and the first synchro they made was Power Tool Mecha Dragon. That weird exclusion aside, I don't know what you want me to say, it draws your card, it's Chicken Game that doesn't kill you, but subsequently doesn't have the protection of Chicken Game. I guess realistically it's like Chicken Game 2. There is one final effect also taken from the manga, however, unlike the manga where it places the next chapter of the story, we didn't get any of the other field spells, so instead it just places any field spell from the deck face up. This seems kinda crazy on the surface, but there's 2 main downsides to this. One, it places it during your standby phase, meaning you need this card to survive the opponent's turn in order to get any value out of it. And 2, it places the card face up rather than activating it, so it doesn't trigger any effects that trigger on activation. This also hilariously means it doesn't actually work with triggering Ancient Fairy Dragon's draw effect, meaning the field spell somehow managed to fuck up working with both of its associated synchros. Regardless, you're most likely gonna pop this with AFD to get a new field spell, so the effect is mainly there because it's the manga effect. That being said, I'm not sure how to fully judge these cards yet. These cards really feel like they're in a similar position to Toy Box last year, where it feels like they're decent cards, but they just need an associated deck to really get going. It's very clear though that we are probably going to be getting an AFD archetype soon, which we've been expecting since its errata. So for now, we'll just have to wait and see what comes in the future before we can fully pass judgment on these cards. But what I can say is this: Konami, keep cooking. I was a bit disappointed when I learned we weren't getting Hell Insects this year since it would have made sense to print them with Battle Wasps, but you had my curiosity when you put Wonko on the cover. And now that I have seen their effects, you have my attention. And now, the moment I have been waiting for. We get to talk about the 2 new number monsters. Those being Shining Number 37 and Shining Number 38. For those unaware, Shining Numbers are essentially the manga equivalent to Chaos Numbers, though for the longest time, the only cards we had for these were Utopia variants. During one of the final duels in the manga, however, we did get a glimpse at 2 more Shining Numbers, those being variations for Hope Harbinger and Hope Woven, before they immediately got overlaid away to make Utopic Zexal. Though that was all we got, and some people even debated as to whether or not these were going to be real cards, or they were just going to be alternate artworks for the base forms. Not helped by the fact that base Hope Harbinger's artwork is actually taken from the panel its Shining form is on. Now, nearly 10 years after they debuted, we finally get these two in full, and now know what they can do. Firstly, let's look at Spider Shark, who is a rank 5 that can be ranked on top of the original Spider Shark, similar to how Shining Utopias could. And once per turn, you can attach a material from this card to target and banish a monster your opponent controls till their standby phase, then if they control any more monsters, they lose 1000 attack. Also, if this Xyz summon card was destroyed this turn, it can revive itself during the end phase. Okay, so first things first, I gotta praise the designers for the flavor of these effects. Spider Shark in Universe was created after Shark was given and transformed number 70 Malevolent Sin, so it having Sin's banish effect as well as the attack drain effect of Hope Woven is a wonderful way of connecting the two cards while also making it more playable. The effect is also a soft once per turn, so if you detach Hope Woven then get it back onto the field, you can then use the effect again for another banish, which is nice, though probably not going to come up often. The revive effect is a bit weirder though, as it's arguably worse than the original Spider Sharks, who could revive any monster in your graveyard except itself, while new Spider Shark only revives itself. It also revives itself without material, so you'll need to get material back onto it again in order to use the banish effect, such as using Virtue Dragon's affected Nexus. Man, I can never look at that effect again without thinking that it's just Nexusing. Speaking of Virtue Dragon though, Spider Shark doesn't actually care about how it's destroyed, just that it was, meaning that popping it with Virtue Stream allows you to get the monster back you lost during your end phase. Overall, I really like this card, though I do wonder if it will see play since Sharks already have a tight extra deck with all of their new support, and they weren't even playing Hope Woven to begin with, and I don't know if they can justify adding 2 more cards into the deck. Though, personally I will if I ever do play it because I really like this card. The other Shining Xyz is number S38, Titanic Galaxy, and people have some things to say about this one, so let's break it down. It can be ranked up the same way as Spider Shark by using Hope Harbinger as material, and it gains 200 attack for every material that it has. And once per turn can target 2 spell or trap cards your opponent controls, and eats them up, with your opponent unable to use their effects in response to this effect. It can also detach one material from itself to reduce its original attack to 1500, to allow itself to attack directly this turn. Once again, I must praise the thematic consistency of this card, making its effect a combination of both its lower form's effect as well as the card it was transformed from. In this case, Titanic Moth. It does suck that it got stuck with the halving effect that Moth got stuck with, though I do prefer it cutting the original attack in half instead of just having the damage like what Moth got. But that then gets us to the rest of the effect and why people aren't happy since it's not really an improvement on the original like how Spider Shark was. Instead of being a spell negate with some attack redirection like the original Hope Harbinger, Titanic Galaxy instead eats 2 back row and gets a bunch of attack with the ability to attack directly. There's no reason to prioritize going to this over the original one. And I think that's the point. Titanic Galaxy isn't meant to replace Hope Harbinger, but rather be paired with it. You make Hope Harbinger turn 1 as a negate, then rank up into Titanic in order to eat back row and swing for game. And if not for game, you'll get a ton of material under it, meaning you can rank up into a fat ass Zeus. Not to mention, it's easier to justify putting into a Galaxy Eyes deck since you're already playing Hope Harbinger and can more easily spare 1 extra deck slot for a guy who can potentially win a game by dealing with problematic back row. No longer have to fear about something like Nightmare Pain where you can just eat it up. Not to mention, Hope Harbinger sees play outside of Galaxy Eyes. You can easily run this in Horus and Blue Eyes, which were already natively making Hope Harbinger Dragon. I know some people aren't happy with how this card turned out, but personally, I really like this card. As for the 2 spells we got, Revelation of Hope lets you send a level 8 dragon to the graveyard to summon a rank 8 dragon from your extra deck, which is treated as a proper summon. My initial impression was that this could be an okay way to shortcut an Xyz summon, until reality hit me like a cinder block when I remembered, oh yeah, you need material to use their effects. So unless you have either of the tiny dragons to attach to them, you're either going to be summoning an Xyz monster that you're then immediately going to rank up off of, or summoning a monster that doesn't need material for an important effect. In that category, your only options are Hope Harbinger, Indigo Eyes, and Dragluzion. The latter of which is one you still want material on because you can use the cheat out C107, and Indigo Eyes is bad. Also, this card is unsearchable, so yeah, let's just move on. The other spell card is Galaxy Journey, which is a quick play spell that summons one of your banished light or dark monsters, and if an Xyz monster you control is banished while this card's in the graveyard, banishes itself and summon it right back to the field. This card is pretty good. The Galaxy back row is extremely accessible, so this card will usually be available when you need it, and being able to recover one of your banished guys can be super nice. It being a quick play means it can potentially be used to summon a guy out to get lethal, or summon Gept in order to trigger Galaxy 100 to rip a card out of their extra deck. It can also summon back Omega. It probably won't, but hey, now you have another way to ruin someone else's day. The graveyard effect seems a bit pointless at first, aside from being a more direct manga reference, but it's actually fairly nice to have since it can deal with SP Little Knight trying to remove your guys. Not the difference maker and you hate the brick on it, but overall, very nice. I wasn't too sure what to expect when it comes to the Zexal cards upon seeing the two Shining monsters on the cover, but I'm really happy with how these cards turned out. The two Shining Xyz are both great thematically and effect-wise, and while Revelation is shit, I think Journey is pretty good. These aren't going to be the last Zexal monsters we get, since we're also going to be getting more in March thanks to the V-Jump subscriptions, but given how good these and Splitting Planarian are, I'd be content with just this for now. And then we have the DDD cards, and I'm going to be upfront, I have no idea what this deck does. I know Dark Contract is important, and I know Gilgamesh is a thing, but that's it. So, sorry that this won't be as in-depth as it could be, but I literally do not know what this deck does, but I'll try to explain what I can. The first of the 3 surveyors we got is DD Count Surveyor. It's a level 8 pendulum that can special summon itself by discarding another DD monster, and on summon searches a new one with 0 attack or defense, which actually covers almost the entirety of the manga card, so good job there connecting them. Its pendulum effect, meanwhile, isn't as impressive, though it is quite interesting. It targets 3 monsters your opponent controls with the same type of attribute when a DD monster is pendulum summoned, and then tributes 2 of them to add the attack of them to the 3rd monster. It's kind of like a makeshift Nibiru, turning multiple guys into one so you can have an easier time outing it. It's also a scale 1, so it's not too bad to have in the pendulum zone, though really it's your main starter to get you to Gilgamesh with some extra help. The extra help in question being Scale Surveyor, who special summons himself while you control a DDD pendulum monster. It also has 2 more monster effects, the first being able to turn itself into a 4, which is fine, since it's meant to make an Xyz, specifically Wave King Caesar, which is neat, but is actually the wrong Caesar, so it's not perfect. The other effect, meanwhile, is that if it's added to the extra deck face up or sent to the graveyard, you can target a DD pendulum monster you control and return it to the hand, which is actually an incredible playmaker as it can bounce back one of your pendulum guys you scaled with Gilgamesh, so you can then normal it out since the whole gauntlet doesn't use the normal summon, which is incredible. As for what you want to bounce, sorry, you'll have to ask the spreadsheet game as I have no fucking clue. These two are a fantastic pair, giving you some great starting lines without using a normal summon, so overall I think these are a wonderful addition to DD. Oh yeah, I guess I should mention the pendulum effect. It lets you turn 2 of your opponent's scales into zeros during their standby phase. If you aren't playing against pendulums, this does literally nothing, and if you're playing against pendulums, it will either completely shut them down, or actively helping them depending on if they can clear their pendulum zone, which most modern pendulum decks can do. You'd rather have this card be anywhere but the pendulum zone, so it's an effect that won't be doing too much. The last DDD card is DD Extra Surveyor. You're gonna want to sit tight for this one. It's a level 5 pendulum with a scale of 4, with 1000 attack and 0 defense. Its pendulum effect is that it lets you banish itself and another pendulum you control when an opponent's monster is destroyed to let a DDD attack twice during the battle phase. And its monster effect lets you discard it to add a DDD pendulum from your extra deck to your hand, and if it becomes banished, banish cards from the top of your opponent's deck up to the number of pendulum monsters in their extra deck face up to give a DDD monster you control 200 attack for each. So then, let me go through every reason why this card is absolutely terrible. Firstly, this is a level 5 monster which is terrible for attack, meaning you need to put extra work to put it onto the field. And for a level 5, it has dreadful stats, which is only saved by the fact that it's a 0 defense monster, meaning it is searchable. What's even more dreadful is the fact that it is a scale 4. 4 is one of the worst skills that a monster can have, only existing to balance out powerful effects, but it appears that someone forgot that because this thing's special effects are terrible. Banishing 2 of your pendulums just to give a guy a second attack is one of the worst things you could do, basically doing your opponent's job out in your skills by doing it for them. And I know it's supposed to pair with its second monster effect, but guess what? Your other pendulum doesn't benefit from getting banished, so it's just a minus for no reason. Oh, and speaking of the banish effect, I can maybe excuse it if it just wasn't another pendulum hate effect. But it is, meaning it does nothing against non-pendulum decks, and it also doesn't take into account other pendulums on the field. And for what, 200 more attack per pendulum? Maybe banish a card off the top of the deck that they want? Whoa boy, make sure you don't have a heart attack with how high your attack values are going. Also, this card is useless outside of grabbing back Skill Surveillance, and yet despite that, I think this might still be the best attack on the card, which would be a very clear indication how terrible this card is. So yeah, if it wasn't obvious already, this card is awful. Finally, we end off by talking about the cards made to support the OCG Stories theme, Magistus with 4 new cards. First up is Crowley, the Gifted Magistus. Right off the bat, you know they wanted to make Magistus good, which it already is pretty close to being, because they just gave them a Poplar, which in case you're unaware, is a monster that can special summon itself from hand when added except by drawing it. This is fantastic as any Magistus with Artemis equipped can search this thing, giving you more field presence. And if that wasn't good enough, on summon, it fusion summons into a Magistus or invoked fusion, and can be treated as Alistair the Invoker when uses material from the field. It's an outstanding monster, being able to set up amazing summons, or be used as material for lane climbing. Boon discarding itself to search Zorroa gets you an insane setup, giving you free bodies on the field to do whatever you want, be it to use Crowley and Spoon to make Mechaba, or link them into many of the good links there are, including the Allura Queen stuff. I'll be keeping this in mind if I go back and finish the Animation Chronicles 2024 video. Really, the only fault I have against this card is that it's not searchable by Magical Meltdown since it's not Alistair the Invoker in deck, and subsequently doesn't get you Invocation. But that was clearly a design trade-off made to not make this card even more busted than it already is, so I can't be complaining. I mean, I can, but they would come off as pretty petty. The new fusion monster, which I was expecting to be an alternate artwork at first, is Zorroa, the Magus Victorious what the fuck is this word?
Verithrania.
Wordy name aside, it can be made using any Magistus monster and an extra deck type monster, which is easy to set up thanks to Crowley and Artemis, and it can target an effect monster that your opponent controls or in your graveyard and equip it to itself. And if your opponent activates a monster effect, sends a Magistus you control to the graveyard to negate the effect, then lets you pop a card your opponent controls. As opposed to Crowley, which was very interesting and had some cool plays, Purple Zorroa is very standard. It either recovers a Magistus or removes an opponent's card, and has a negate tied to it. And that's about where the interest ends. It's the blandest way they could have gave this deck an endboard piece, only saved because, well, it is a good card, I can't deny that. But if good equaled interesting, then Rise Heal and Tenpai would be some of the most interesting decks ever printed. Don't take my cynicism as a knock against the card. It is a good card, but it's not a fun one to look at. Vera Magic Lacrima of Light is their quick play spell, and it's always treated as a Magistus and a Witchcraft card, tying into Vera being connected to those two archetypes. Fitting its effect also ties into both archetypes, as the first one lets you send a spellcaster or spell card to the graveyard if you control a Magistus or a Witchcrafter, and a second one each tells one of those two in response to an opponent's card effect. Now I'm not too familiar with Witchcrafter and to an extent Magistus, but having a card that says, if you control an archetypal thing, foolish something specific or when interrupted actually go off queen, is pretty good. The spell then from what I can gather is a bit underwhelming in archetype since it's mainly there for Witchcrafter, but all of their spells only recycle themselves during the end phase, which is kinda slow. But hey, you can also send Metal Foe's Fusion if you want to draw instead. Obviously it's got many uses outside of the archetype. It does bin 2 things that have a wide reach, but this video has been going on long enough and I'm not familiar with this thing, so I think it's safe to just call this good and move on. The final new card of this set is Magia Magic Thor Hammer, the Endymion support for this set. And like the last spell, it's treated as a card of both its archetypes. It lets you send one other Magistus card you control, or remove 2 spell counters, which is probably what you'll be doing, to either special summon a spellcaster from your hand, graveyard, or face-up extra deck, or banish a card. Can I just say this card's good and go home? No! I'm sorry if that sounds a bit disingenuous, but I do not know what Endymion even remotely does, so I'm thankful that it's at least obviously good. I will say, this is a case where I wish it was a quick play so I could potentially use it on the opponent's turn, which could open up some more interesting plays, but I guess that's the price it pays for being able to revive any spellcaster, in case you needed a terrible way to summon Jowgen the Spiritualist. Good. Congrats, Endymion. I would say that Konami didn't need to go as hard as they did making all these Magistus cards nearly 10 out of 10s, but that would be a lie since they actually do. Unlike Sky Striker, which was already good and had a dedicated fanbase that would eat up whatever garbage they were feeding them, Magistus didn't have as widespread of a fanbase at first, and the deck wasn't fully realized, so they actually had to put in the effort to actually make the deck into a good spot that people would be interested in trying. And they clearly still are, what with 2 really strong promo cards having already released and a new Link 2 that should be out by the time this video goes up, Magistus is looking to have a bright future ahead.
That one didn't age quite so well.
So, overall, what are my thoughts on Premium Pack 2025? Well, if it wasn't clear, I'm very happy with the set. So many great releases to be excited for, nice boosts to rogue strats like DDD and Ice Barriers, and the potential for an AFD archetype has me beyond happy with how things have turned out. They weren't all winners. Kaiser and Revelation have extremely niche uses that make them questionable to run, and Twin Pillars and Extra Surveyor are just flat out bad. But 1/5 of the cards not being great while some of the rest are outstanding isn't too much to cry over. I'm excited to see what we get next year, as well as for what to expect from next year's Animation Chronicles. Then again, I probably should finish the previous one since it's like 90% scripted. We have to go back and rewrite a bit since that was back when the thing released. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed this. My name's Era. Thanks for watching.